Hi, I'm Anna.
I'm Ben.
For AutoSave, welcome to our channel.
Today we're watching Mushoku Tensei Season 2, Episode 24. Saying Episode 24 makes me sad, because I'm like, oh my gosh, how many episodes are within this season? Because 24 is already a lot.
Right, and sometimes seasons end on Episode 24.
That is scary. But what to expect going into this episode? I am thinking that we are going to get a conversation between Rudy and Sylphie about Roxy. I'm also thinking that we are going to, unfortunately, have grief on the ends of Aisha and Norn.
Right.
And that is going to be hard to see.
I think that there are definitely two hard conversation pieces that are kind of being brought to the forefront in terms of what might be happening in this next episode. Like, Rudy and Roxy did mess up a little bit last episode. A little more than a little bit. But how they're going into approaching things now, coming out of the episode, is definitely putting the right foot forward. You know, talk to your wife first and then ask me again. How will that conversation go with Sylphie? I maybe feel a little better about how that might go in comparison to how I feel the reveal of Paul and then Zenith's situation will go to the family. I think I feel a little more hopeful for how one conversation will go.
Your dad's dead, your mom can't talk, and I'm taking a second wife. Ready?
Yeah.
Sweet.
We are very close to home now. So something could have happened at home? Is he rushing to make sure they're all okay?
Oh no.
He's scared that something's wrong with her.
Well, yeah, regret's different from sadness. Why is it so dark and barren?
This is a fake out.
What? Oh. Wow.
Her hair's gotten longer. Oh,
Norn.
no.
Oh no. Our father.
Are those his ashes?
Mm-hmm.
But when she sees that he's injured too, the conflicting emotions.
以上がこれまでの顛末だ。
お父さんは助からず、お母さんも記憶が。
そうだ。
兄さんも頑張ったんですよね。
全力を尽くしたつもりだ。
兄さんが頑張っても
Then no one's
Wow.
would have been. Oh.
Great line.
どうしてもダメで、お父さん死んじゃう。
Think about how much time it was just Norn and Paul.
その剣、私が持っていてもいいですか？
そうだな。ノルンが持ってろ。でもむやみに使おうとするなよ。ことは心の中にも一本持っておく必要がある。心構えが必要ってことだ。
The words. Oh my god.
Verbatim.
She knows.
Don't think it makes you strong. Oh my god. Holding his... where his arm was.
わかりました。
母さん。奥様。
治らないの？
わからない。一緒に暮らしてもらおうと思う。リーリャさんに一任するつもりだ。けどみんなには細かいところで迷惑を。
お母様もここで暮らすんですか？
Of course.
はい。ルーデウス様のお世話になるつもりです。
ねえ、アイシャ、私たちに遠慮することないよ。
She probably felt bad crying. She comforted Norn and waited for permission to cry. It's fucked up. Oh.
じゃあ俺らは宿でも探すとすっか。
くらいうちに泊まっていただいても。
先輩。
Roxy is not amongst them.
水いらずを邪魔するほど俺らは野暮じゃねえんだよ。
Jackasses to break up your family like that.
そんな新規成果をすんなよ。先輩。
お主に礼を言われる筋合いはない。言われるならパウロからじゃな。
タルハンドさん。
This is a great song.
らしくねえぜ。いつも通り、おい、シエリーとでも言ってくれよ。
男どもはすぐにカッコつけたがりますわ。さて。
Yeah, I was about to say, she's probably very ready to see Cliff.
リーゼさん、お世話になりました。
すみませんでしたわ。
いえ、あれは俺の。
あのパーティーの私の役割は私のミスでもありますわ。
俺は責めませんよ。
なら、
Or even
自分も責
himself.
めたら
And you
ダメですわ。
shouldn't blame yourself either.
はい。
シルフィー、ルーデウスは
Oh
あなたの
god.
ことを愛しています。
Good prep work, Ellen Elise.
シルフィー、大事な話がある。
聞くよ。
Wait, is Roxy gonna be there for it? Oh, okay. Oh, wait, she is!
Not just
Oh, and
Roxy.
Norn and Aisha are gonna be there?
俺はここにいるロキシーを二人目の妻として迎えようと思っている。
どういうこと？
父さんが死んで、もう生きることさえどうでもよくなって、そんな時に助けてくれたのが。ごめんシルフィー、ミサオを立てるって言ったのに約束守れなかった。シルフィー、許してほしい。
許せるわけないでしょ。どんな気持ちで兄さんを待っていたか知ってて言ってるんですか？ルディは大丈夫かな？ルディに会いたいね。ルディも今頃ご飯食べてるかなって。ビ姉さんの顔と声を知ってて言ってるんですか？父さんを助けられなかったのはしょうがないって思いました。
Oh.
左手も失ってそれぐらい厳しかった。兄さんを責めることなんてできないって。
But
それなの
Oh.
ロキシーはそんな俺を自分の気持ちを捨てて助けてくれたんだ。
シルフィー姉さんだってその場にいれば兄さんを助けたに決まってます。
お前だってわかるだろ。部屋に閉じこもって自分じゃどうしようもないと思った時の気持ちはどうしてないがしろにできるんだ。
わかるけど兄さんには感謝してますけど妻をめとるなんてミリス様はお許しになりません。
That is where she grew up, you
なんで
know?
こんな小さい子なんですか。割らないぐらいじゃないですか。ずうずうしいとか思わないんですか。ずかずかと入り込んできて悪いと思わないんですか。
ノル言い過ぎだ。
Sylphie hasn't said anything.
迎えるって言い出したのは俺なんだ。悪いのは俺でロキシーは悪くない。
兄さんは黙っていてください。大体身を引こうとしたのならなんです。結局兄さんの言葉に甘えただけでしょ。そうですね、ずうずうしいです。申し訳ありませんでした。
反対されることは分かっていた。だがロキシーに嫌な思いをさせたまま彼女を幸せにするって決めたのにどうすればいい。
待って。
How mature she looks.
ロキシーさん、待ってください。なんで引き止めるんですか、シルフィーネ。行かせればいいじゃないですか。うんちゃん、僕のために。
But no one let me
でも大丈
speak.
夫だから。ありがとう。ロキシーさんはルディを助けてくれたんだよね。でも下心もありましたので。
I had ulterior motives. I love the transparency
下
of
心
these.
なしでって言われても。
If I wouldn't have believed you if you told me you didn't.
僕がロキシーさんの立場でもやっぱり同じことをしちゃうと思う。僕は時間の問題だと思ってたんだ。女の人を連れてくるの。ほら、ルディってエッチでしょ。きっと誰かとしちゃうだろうなって思ってたんだ。
She knew who she was marrying, and she loves him
分
anyway.
かったよ。僕もあんな顔だったのかな。不快なものを見せてしまって。不快じゃなかったよ。なんて言えばいいかな。あのね、ロキシーさんのことは俺の尊敬する魔術師はあの人だけだって。恐縮です。だからちょっと嫉妬してるところもあったんだ。人なんだろうなって。でも実際に見てルディが好きなだけの普通の女の子なんだって思ったら
She feels a lot
で消
better.
えちゃっただって僕と一緒だもん。僕は歓迎します。
Wow. Sylphie is fucking awesome.
一緒に。
She was prepared for something like this. Yeah, Norn's upset. I'm glad we're practicing sword fighting though.
ノル、稽古なんだからそんな乱暴に。
Training so she can use
It
false
is
sword.
your fault.
ルディはミリス教徒じゃないんだから許してあげて。でもパウロさんだって奥さんが2人いたんだよ。こんにそうですけど。ノルンちゃん、リーリアさんにもそういう。
Wow. Looking at Aisha.
ごめん、アイシャ。いいよ、別に。ノルン姉が知ってるから何その言い方。ノルン姉が待ちなさい。
Oh, there was a smile on her face as she chased after her.
まさかノルンが剣術を習って
Sylphie does not have to go to the extent that she has, and because she has, just makes me love her as a character so much more.
大切な人が遠くで戦っているのに自分は待っているだけで辛いからさ。予定日はいつなんですか。あと1ヶ月ちょっとかな。でもロキシー、本当にいいの？結婚するのをそれまで待つ必要なんてない。
Wow.
いえ、正直シルフィーには申し訳ない気持ちが大きいので出産まで待たせてください。ロキシーがそう言うなら。うん、わかった。楽しみですね。うん、早く会いたいな。
The baby.
生まれました。
Look who Norn has cozied up to.
シルフィー、お疲れ様。
シルフィエット様。
This is
Wow.
like Zenith and Rudy.
髪緑。
Her hair isn't green, thank goodness.
ルディも抱いてあげて。さあ、旦那
This must be so surreal for Lilia.
Wonder where Zenith is.
俺のこの子がシルフィーが産んでくれた
Look at the ears.
俺の子供
Oh, really a mix of the parents. That's so cute.
I wish Paul was here.
Paul's grave?
パウロ父さん久しぶり俺父親になったよ
Pouring 2 cups.
女の子だ子供だしきっと美人にな
A
るよ
girl.
子供は生まれたよあの時俺を生かしてくれたから俺は今子供を抱くことができるんだ父さんがいなかったら俺は名前はルーシーに決めたルーシー・グレイラットそれからロキシー師匠を妻にしたんだ妻が2人
Just like you did.
どうしようって考えたりしたのかなでも父さんだからな俺もあんまり難しく考えない方がいいのかな前世の記憶とか持っててさ父さんと向き合えていなかったけど今はもうパウロ・グレイラットの息子のつもりだから俺ようやく分かったよ自分がまだまだ子供だ前世の記憶で大人ぶってただけのガキだって
Using old memories.
子供も生まれて親にもなったしすぐに大人にならなくちゃとは思うけど
Wow.
きっともっとたくさん失敗していっぱい悩みながら繰り変わっていかなきゃ大人にはなれないんだろうな父さんがそうしてくれたみたいに父さんが残してくれたものを守るよじゃあまた来る今度はみんなを連れて
いろんな一段落がついた
Oh.
辛いこともあったし
What? What?
けれど終わりじゃないまだまだこの世界で生きてい
You're
く
gonna show me Body Gotti and Rui Jerd walking side by
Side by
side
side,
and not
smiling.
explore it. You're also gonna show me the back of Eris. I also appreciate that.
I can
line,
die
thank you.
anytime
Without
without
regrets. Amazing.
This feels like end of series.
Nah, end of season.
I
That
know,
worries
but
me.
like
I don't want it to be the end of the season.
Succession. Oh.
Oh no! That means it's we got the same type of thing at the end of last season.
Wait, what is this? Is it
There are no
basically just saying like
Oh, announcing
Oh!
a season 3.
announcing season 3?
制作決定
Okay, that was Mushoku Tensei Season 2, Episode 24. I'm gonna go out on a limb and make a wild guess that that was the
Ooh.
last episode of this season.
Yeah. It definitely felt like it
No, but-
towards the end with not only the dialogue. I would say like if we didn't get any of the kind of outro stuff of the picture and then the numeral 3, I would have thought just by the dialogue alone it felt like an ending of a season. And all of us as a family looking up at the sky together like we're in a sitcom.
In all seriousness, though, sorry, that was a great season.
Core 2 was great. Core 1 was great. Whole season was great. Mushoku Tensei.
Man, what a contrast to Season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Episode. Let's talk about that first.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
What did you think of... Who was your favorite in terms of dialogue this episode?
Sylphie.
Mine was Norn.
I think they're the top 2 options, definitely. I mean, both of them. I would say if you put, like, some sort of, like, into this... If you put this episode into some sort of, like, program and asked it, like, who had the most lines in the episode, it would come probably to the 3 characters, Sylphie, Norn, and Rudy.
Yeah.
And I would say Sylphie and Norn are definitely up there. I'd be curious to know exactly who spoke the most in this episode. Or maybe it was a fake out to me. Maybe I'm confused. Maybe because their lines held such weight that it feels like they spoke more. Like maybe they didn't actually have a lot of lines. and I could be silly.
I think that everything that Norn said needed to be spoken aloud, even regardless of it having a painful effect and response on people, because it was deserved.
That stuff needed to be said by someone, and if it was gonna be said by anyone, it was the character Norn.
I love the idea of, like, do you fucking have any idea that this entire time Sylphie has been asking in the middle of the day if Rudy's sitting down now to eat, how Rudy's doing? I hope Rudy's okay. I hope he comes back soon. And she was so lonely and alone, and she didn't do anything. She didn't go find a second husband, you know? And that needed to be said to even start to try to have a dialogue from Sylphie. And holy shit, Sylphie, like, I feel like Sylphie, like, in terms of maturity, like, aged 100 years. Right. Not saying she wasn't mature before, but, like, it takes to be able to operate with the little shown emotion that she did and try to be aware of everybody else's feelings and what Rudy and Roxy came into the situation thinking. It takes somebody special, and Sylphie is one of my favorite characters in the show now.
Yeah, I definitely think that Sylphie is one of the best characters in terms of even, like, writing. I love Sylphie. I love how she handled this situation, mainly because of how she spoke on it herself, how she feels. Now, I don't love how she handled it because that's how I wanted her to handle it as a viewer. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I like how she handled it for herself because of how she felt about it. She was not betraying herself here. She was honest about the fact that she thought that this would happen. She has identified that she feels like she knows her husband, that she knows Rudy. She also is very aware, and the first person to say, we do not follow the Millis teachings. She also knew, you know, growing up as a child, she knew Lillian, she knew Zenith, and she knew that household situation. And one of my favorite things that she said was that she used to be jealous of Roxy.
Mm-hmm.
That there was this no face to this name that held such weight in Rudy's life.
The only mage that I would look up to.
And you think about it, and it's like, Rudy taught Sylphie so much in terms of magic. And so hearing about someone that was better at magic, someone that Rudy even looked up to, that he held in such a high regard, that could help him out in fights, where Sylphie feels like she is to be left home alone because she is not as strong. There is so much, there's jealousy there. But once she was able to put, like, really face the person in reality and see that it was a human being, a girl that looks at Rudy the same way that Sylphie does, and the authenticness of the, like, reality there, that this is not some person to put on a pedestal. This is a person who themselves is crying, saying that, agreeing that they are shameless. They are not on a pedestal. This is just a person that happens to have lived a while and taught Rudy magic. Like,
yeah.
And she loves Rudy.
And in the same vein of that, what Norn said was needed to be said, that was more than needed to be said. That perception of who Roxy was and how it changed to what it is now. And I know a lot of people, or I think I've encountered a lot of people who, if they were in Roxy's position there, they would have been so offended. Like, oh, you're just a normal girl. I have no reason to be jealous over you. Like, some petty people. You would have taken
it as, like, a slight.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna be the like, yeah, I'm not worried about you becoming a second wife because you're nothing to be worried about.
Yeah, rather than trying to understand the intent and all get on the same page. And,
it was like Sylphie saying, we can be a family. Like, yeah. I will accept you. Yeah. I am reaching out to you and accepting you as the second wife, which is entirely what Sylphie meant it to be. I think that I'm just so happy with the writing in terms of, like, how we've resolved what happened last episode, and then how we handled Sylphie responding to that. I was surprised it wasn't like a conversation just between the two of them.
Yeah. And then like after the two of them being alone with it, make it a conversation between everybody.
It needed to be a conversation between everybody because, like you said, what Norn said needed to be said for viewers even, I think. The dirty laundry needed to be aired out first. This was wrong that you betrayed and were unfaithful. That needed to be said aloud so that we can then take a step forward and all feel like we're on equal footing, where everything has been aired out. We can bring back a balance here and all step forward as a family.
Yeah. I absolutely love that Norn took up Paul's sword.
Yeah.
It made me so happy, and I loved the idea that upon picking it up, it was so heavy that, like, Aisha's about to help, but then she, like, resolves herself and hugs the sword by herself. I love that. I love that they were training later on in the episode, and Sylphie's like, I don't blame her. Like,
it sucks.
It sucks not feeling like you could be helpful. And it also sets up an expectation that I have of the first episode of season 3. And it needs to be Rudy and Norn sword fighting, and it needs to be a 1-for-1 parallel of Paul and Rudy sword fighting in season 1.
And I feel like Norn needs to have shown progress. Like, there needs to be progress there in her sword fighting.
No, agreed. Sure. But Rudy needs to have that same step in that Paul did, that Norn's like, whoa, what the fuck? You know?
Oh, like when we saw, like, the feet in, like, the
it needs to be
season.
a 1-for-1. Like,
I remember when we watched that episode, I can't remember exactly what number it was, but it was like within the first 3. And we, like, in the discussion, we went back and we watched the animation of the footwork in that fight, and it was crazy.
I loved it. Also, that is a pretty decent segue in talking about the Norn sword situation to Zenith holding Paul's armor. I think I have a couple thoughts on it. My first upon seeing it is hope. Like, it definitely immediately elicits a sense of hope. But within the, I don't know if this will ever change mindset, it could be something as just like a physical response that it feels like the right thing to do. It could be something like, oh, you see Norn doing this and you're kind of aware, or kind of aware what's going on, so I'm going to do this. Or even less than that, of I saw somebody grab something, I'm going to do it.
And I think another way that they kept us feeling like I'm not going to take this and run with it too far. Like, this could be a hopeful sign of something to come in the future, but I'm not going to take it and run with it, was not having Zenith be a part of the birth of the baby. That could have been a moment of feeling connection, like, as the mother, and this is her grand baby being born in front of her, and maybe memories of giving birth to either Rudy or Norn could have been evoked in that moment. But we didn't have Zenith there, and I think that was probably the right choice to keep us as viewers in a place of feeling like, I'm not going to hold on to, I'm going to remember that Zenith grabbed a hold of the armor, but I'm not going to take it as this is a sign that everything's going to go back to normal and soon.
Yeah.
What's up?
Where do we get, I'm sorry, I'm looking for something real quick.
I actually wanted to really quick go back to the scene of Norn talking to Rudy, purely just to talk about it in a scene writing sense and a dialogue sense, and not necessarily content of what was being said, because we already talked about that. One of my favorite scene writing things and dialogue writing things is when someone is talking for someone else in a really heated way, and they are just talking and talking and talking, and everything they're saying is, like, hitting, but you are not hearing anything from the person that's being, like, protected with the dialogue. And I just love that, because then as a viewer, I'm, like, so ready to hear it. It honestly makes, like, drum roll please. It's a drum roll please, where I'm, like, even more excited to hear what the person that's being supposedly protected in this moment has to say. And oftentimes it's in stark contrast to the person that was trying with all the love in the world to protect them with their dialogue. And I love scenes like that. So that I wanted to talk about. Another thing before we leave, kind of Paul's death, the armor on the table, Zenith grabbing it. Before we leave what happened there, I would also want to bring up Aisha's reaction, where she comforts Norn the entire time Norn is crying. Like, we have everyone in the room looking at Norn, you know, thinking about Norn as the one grieving here, obviously because audibly she is the one grieving. And then Norn gives, like, permission, basically, even though, like, saying, like, you don't need permission here, like, go ahead. And then Aisha's able to hug her mom and cry herself. And I thought that that was a really good moment in terms of writing those characters, because it fit how that situation would be handled. It made sense to me.
Yeah. I'm going back into season 1 when we are meeting Roxy's parents. I remembered, like, the idea that Roxy's dad was like, or Rudy was like, can I call you father-in-law? And Roxy's dad was like, nope. And, like, I thought that was like that will be a funny conversation when that happens. But
if Roxy will ever go back home.
But I'm trying to also find the episode where we get Roxy reuniting with her parents, because I think that might be a potential solution, or at least method to get more information about Zenith. Can Roxy's parents read somebody's mind who doesn't have that same ability? Like, can they communicate telepathically with somebody, or at least talk to somebody in a non-verbal way that could give us some type of intel on what Zenith is going through?
I feel like I need to go back to that episode just to, like, really see again what the rules were in terms of that.
The episode that Roxy's with her?
No, the episode where Rudy's there, because when we get that's our first interaction with the idea of speaking within the mind, and that's what this group of people does. That was when we got all the kind of rules and the whether or not other people could be heard internally. Yeah. I would have thought, I mean, that was our first introduction to it.
I think we get more about Ruijerd this episode than anything other than, like, with Roxy's parents, other than they can talk at a distance. I think it's more focused on when we get to learn about Roxy's past. I guess not. I guess that's just them being able to communicate with one another than them being able to, like, read a mind or read thoughts, right?
Right. It's more so, like, because we get the specification of other people being outsiders, that they are an exclusionary world. That's, like, language that Roxy uses. So I would imagine that they cannot.
That was the emotional crux of that episode. I was just being a dumbass. Like, the idea that the fear that they had about Roxy, but then being able to see how she could verbally communicate and seeing that as a route.
I think that there isn't total flaw in starting to think that way or talk that way, in terms of, like, we're in a magical world. So is there anything that we can do with magic that can be an aid here in terms of communicating with Zenith?
I don't know.
I don't have tons of hope, because I don't think the series is trying to give me tons.
No, I agree with you there.
But I definitely feel like this is a magical world, and we're being given characters that will stop at nothing to help the people they love with things that are thought to be impossible, like Ellen, Elise, and Cliff, and then Paul wanting to save Zenith with his dying breath from this crystal. So that gives me at least the hope that there will be attempts at trying to help Zenith.
Yeah. I have a lot of fear over what Rudy was saying upon running back home. I would not have felt the fear that I do unless Rudy said it, because it's Rudy's perspective on this that matters. The idea that Man God said that he would regret it. What he experienced was sadness and expected something to be available for regret.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried that potentially reopens the wound of something to happen because of that would lean into the regret idea and it not be just Paul's death.
So, Man God obviously can be an unreliable source. That's totally fine. Man God can have a lacking idea of the growth that Rudy can have within himself and his own ability to confront things and his regrets and his sadness and his emotions. That's on the table. I feel like, at least in my opinion, I thought that if there was going to be a regret, like Man God said, that would be something that we saw come to like
fruition
with before the end of the season. It is not something I thought would be carried into any further content, because that was like so big for this season and this trip to Belgrade, and we're already months away from that trip and from Paul's death.
Yeah.
So how far down the line was Man God expecting us to was it an immediate regret, or is it years down the line?
Yeah.
You are going to look back at this and regret it.
I mean, like, it definitely, I'm still there with the idea that was what was intended to be the regret, is Paul's death and everything that happened within that. But having Rudy re-question it just put it a little bit on the table for me, and I'm not gonna like completely forget the idea that that's what Man God was alluding to.
Mm-hmm. I think something that I could kind of segue from that is something that Rudy says when he's at Paul's grave, which is that he was using his past self to grow up within this world, his past self's memories, and that is something that like he has like kind of stopped doing, because his memories were what was keeping him from living within this world and truly living. And he says something like, so now the memories that kept me from facing you.
Yep.
And now I see myself as the son of Paul Greyrat. And that's why I'm kind of going...
If you wanted to read them, they're...
Yeah. Dad, I was a failure as a son. I have these memories of my past life, so I couldn't face you like a son should. But I see myself as Paul Greyrat's son now. I finally get it. I've realized I was still a kid. Just a brat using old memories to act grown up. Now I'm a parent with a kid of my own, so I figure I need to grow up fast.
I love that.
But I'm sure I'll fail plenty more times. So this scene makes me start to put the ideas out there of, is Man God talking? Man God's always talking to the old Rudy when he's talking in that space. Is that showing to us that there's absent thought in terms of Rudy's growth within this world or what it could be? Are we talking to what we see in front of us and what their trajectory would be if we hold on to that past self? And that's why I'm bringing it up, because Rudy here is identifying that up until this moment, he was so heavily using his past self and his past memories in order to figure out how to act within this world, how to get ahead, how to be grown up. And now he's realized that it's okay to fail, and he doesn't need that.
I mean, just a couple episodes ago is when we really solidified where we were in looking at Paul as Paul Greyrat versus looking at Paul like his actual father, right? And that came with the reanalysis from Rudy of how he treated and did not treat his parents and not showing up to their funeral. I think that in itself was growth and change and being more aware and immersed of yourself as an individual now being you, rather than it being a face that you're putting on. He's no longer disconnecting that. They are linked, and he has grown and moved on from it. So within future conversations with Man God, while I do think it would probably still be within Rudy's old body, I wonder what the discourse would be like between the two. Whether it be argumentative in the sense that Man God's like, you really think you changed? This is just a different world. Or like, you know.
Right. We were never supposed to completely trust Man God's intentions or motives. We still, like, the idea of, like, an unreliable narrator. Like, Man God is, to me, something that I am not going to think of everything he says and says he feels as exactly what it is. It's something you have to take with a grain of salt.
I trust Man God, but within that comes like how, depending on the tone and context, my interpretation changes.
Interesting. So like scene by scene basis.
Yeah, for sure. Because Man God has proved time and time again to know what the fuck is happening.
Yes, he could know what the fuck is happening and then use that and use all the correct attempts at all of the proving of something to be right with an ulterior motive.
Yeah, I do think it's fascinating to bring into question, like, okay, if Man God tells Rudy he's going to regret it, is that Man God saying that the Rudy that died in the last life was going to regret it? Is that Man God saying that the current Rudy sitting in front of him would regret it? Or is that saying that the Rudy that is yet to come will regret it?
Something else to think about is it something that Man God wouldn't want? If we think about where Rudy is within this episode mentally, could he have gotten to this place of saying, I can die with no regrets, and I am going to try to, it's okay if I fail, and I'm going to figure out how to be a grown-up and not using those memories? Could he have gotten to that place if he hadn't gone to beggar it? That's a lot of, like, solidification of growth that he's been trying to get to, and we've been seeing stepping stones from, if Nanahoshi goes back, I'll have her send a message to my brother. We've been getting these stepstones, and I feel like, could Rudy really be in the mental space that he's in within this episode if he hadn't gone through what he just went through and got through it? So, were we trying to hold him at a certain place? Were we trying to keep him? Because if we were telling him he's going to regret it to go, and there are ulterior motives, then you might want to keep him as what? Like a moldable pawn that you can tell different things to do and that you know they'll want to do it because they're easier to read or easier to manipulate?
Well, within that, let's think about going forward. What would Man God's next interaction with Rudy be? It would, in my opinion, if Man God has an end goal that has not already been set into motion to be fulfilled by Rudy and needs more active work, the only thing I could see Rudy listening to Man God and choosing to do one of the options that Man God lays out in front of him is if it has to deal with the safety of his friends or his family. And or like something with teleportation, or Nanahoshi going back would mean you have to go back, or some crazy shit, right? Do you like, obviously we're getting a season 3. I'm happy about that. What potential conflict do you think awaits us? We have Zenith.
Yeah.
A lot of the loose ends have been tied up. Not close to all of them, but like a lot of the obvious ones.
We have Zenoba studying that doll.
Yeah.
That's a kind of loose end that's like really has a lot of lore to it. That's the house that Rudy moved into. There's a lot of lore there. That
So
I think
somebody
is left
showing
to
back
be
up at the house could be a thing.
Unlocking the secrets of the doll and I don't know, maybe being able to utilize it. Something can happen there. We do have the fact that we're supposed to go help Ariel, especially like the baby's born. You know, she is going to go back and try to get the throne back. That's a conflict, obviously, because we're like getting into politics and fighting within this world. We are potentially leaving a child. If Sylphie's not pregnant at that time, even though she has a child, would she still want to go? We know that Ariel doesn't want her to and wants Rudy to kind of take her place.
Yeah.
That's a conflict. Eris was shown to us.
Yeah, that's not a conflict.
Not a conflict, but just a unpredictable force.
But in talking about what would spur an interaction with Man God,
I know.
Man
God wanted to talk to us about mating seasons.
Yeah, but I mean, it's within the idea of going to get Zenith in that same like concept, right? And see Paul.
Nanahoshi is obviously still experimenting. That's a definite like loose end that could have a Man God conversation. It could deal with Orsted or just leaving this world.
A lot of it on my end is like an SOS again, or something just shows up. In talking about getting to see Eris, before we get to see Eris, this show has the audacity to show me Rui Jerd and Body Gotti within hugging distance. And I don't get to see more of it. I don't understand the context behind it.
Within hugging distance.
How did we get here? I'm mad that I didn't get to see... There was no dialogue exchanged.
We look like we're just chilling. We look like we're on a journey and we're talking and walking like friends. It's insane.
Eris has the sword that I think Roxy's parents gave us. I think. I could be wrong about that. But Eris being shown at all is a massive, like, you know, reveal to me.
We took a second wife, Ben. Do you think that there's potential in this story to take more wives? And do you think Eris would be a wife?
I have an answer to that. No, I don't think there's potential to take a third wife, because on any future journey now, I think Sylphie and Roxy will make sure that at least one of them is accompanying Rudy at all times, so that
he never needs to be pulled out of a tough emotional spot by any other woman.
Yeah,
they're gonna like solidarity. Like if Eris ever shows up, Roxy and Sylphie are gonna be like back to back. Like
I think nope. Eris would be like, I don't fucking want him, but I do think like we talked about after their interaction, like is there a 5% chance that Eris left that pregnant, like, and Rudy has another kid out there. I don't think that that's the case, but I definitely think it's an interesting point to entertain. Last we saw of Eris, she was with Ghislaine. Maybe something could happen to Ghislaine that Eris would need help with, or maybe it would just be meeting upon the street. I'm not sure. I would
like it if Eris stayed, just at the moment. This is like, obviously it can change and I'd still like it, but at the moment I like the idea of her just being like this single force in this world that doesn't get tied down.
I would love for Eris to still be a fighter. And like, not to say that if she could find something that would make her happy, do that for sure. But in my, like, Eris was so fucking cool. Do you remember that clip episode at the end of season 1 when we got to see her pop off? Like, I loved seeing Eris fight.
I think that we might be seeing her when it comes to the Ariel conflict.
Yeah.
Because she's a part of the Grey Rat family. And we know that she left in the middle of the night, like after like being told that she was going to be married off to someone in the family that was taking power. And I think that she potentially could be either not hired, but, you know, requisition. Is that the word? No. Requisition is like taking land. What is the word? Like she could potentially be requested to act with Ariel and be joining that squad, if you will, to fight with Ariel. Just in terms of politics and family ties, that's there on the table of her coming back into the story.
So to reopen the question a little bit with, like, what would spur Man God, let's remove Man God from the situation and take Rudy's last line into context. Okay. Seriously, I can die anytime without regrets. Assuming that season 3 isn't just going to be, like, peace, which it could be, and that would be awesome. What would make it so that a regret would be on the table?
If we're still holding on to what Man God said?
No, like disregarding Man God here.
And we're purely just talking about how Rudy says the word regret in his final dialogue?
So I'll explain. So like dying without regrets, that's what he can say right now, and that's awesome. In terms of opening up a new season and it not having to do with peace, then therefore it would deal with conflict. If Rudy's having to be conflicted or brought into a conflict, would that result in A, Rudy being within a conflict but not necessarily having any regrets upon dying and him doing what he will, or something reopening or opening a new wound within Rudy that he would have to fight for so that he wouldn't die with a regret?
I think that potentially it could be entertaining or good to show this character in this mindset being a acting force with fighting any conflict that is to arise. Someone who has this a mental strength here, a I'm going to go in and try my best and do my best to help whoever I've deemed, like, whatever missions and duties. Like, Lilia has a line to him a couple episodes ago about he needs to figure out what his duty is and then handle that. And for Lilia, Zenith is going to be her duty. And I think that there's potential, and it could be really entertaining to see a Rudy that, with determining what his duty is, goes at it full force with this attitude of, if I die here, no regrets, this is my duty, this is the mantle I've picked up, and I'm going to be this awesome action fighter within this conflict that's going on.
Within that same discourse, I would imagine specifically Sylphie being like, you know what happened when Paul died. You wouldn't want your family dealing with it if you did. Like, don't get into any unnecessary harm.
Well, I don't think he would get into unnecessary harm. That's why I keep bringing up the Ariel situation, because of course Sylphie would want him to go fight in that instance. Sylphie's not going to keep him.
No, I agree with you with that.
Anything that he deems his duty. And I don't think Rudy is going to pick something that is unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would risk something if it was like so unnecessary. It has to be important to him or the people that he loves.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if he would be the first to go in to a situation, regardless of if it would be necessary or not, if it was too dangerous. Like, I don't know if the rest of the family would be chill with that.
He does have a lot more people in his house now that he is the kind of head of the table for.
I hope Cliff and Ellen Elise had a good reunion.
They were like with a little blankie looking out the window. I bet they were really happy to see each other.
Yeah.
It's sweet.
I loved that Ellen Elise, upon leaving, was like, Sylphie, Rudy loves you. I loved, like, not getting too into the weeds of it, but I think that within Sylphie's inner monologue, that was reevaluated. Sylphie hearing that from Ellen Elise upon the revelation of what Roxy was.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this season compared to the first season? Not in terms of like both had so many different things, challenges to tackle, and different.
Right. They were both so seamlessly like tied together. I mean, the episode 1 of season 2 called upon so many things from season 1 that it literally just felt like you were still immersed and it hadn't changed. It wasn't even a new season. And then season 2 obviously had a core 1 and a core 2, so there's a separation there. So it is kind of hard to like have a blanket statement of like, how did I feel about this specific thing? When it just feels like it's been a story in its entirety, just like in a linear line that hasn't been affected. But I think if I tap into maybe the emotional stuff, or maybe how I feel about Rudy as a character, and mainly the emotional stuff that's happened, I think that season 2 has been a standout and incredible in terms of things it's tackled. Like, season 2, the beginning, we're tackling panic attacks. We're tackling, like, just how Rudy feels about himself. We're tackling the feeling of loss of love and heartbreak and betrayal.
I think it's important to bring up that, like, this is the first, granted we've had 2 of them, but we ended last season at a low point for Rudy. And this season starting out, we were completely alone. And that is the farthest thing to be true at the end of this season. The issue that was created in season 1, that was the mass teleportation, has concluded in a specific instance within Rudy, right? Obviously, the rest of the world has repercussions still, but within that singular story, so much has changed.
Within this story, where did the parallels between Rudy and Paul's life stop?
Yeah.
Because in this final episode of this season, Rudy says to the Grave that about how similar he is in terms of like how Paul lived his life. They're identifying at least plot points that are similar. And it does open up the question of like how many parallels from this point on in terms of like Paul's death, another mass teleportation, Paul took on the job of being the rescuer of all of these people, the reuniter of families, not just his own. He took on a greater, like, a service to this world. Is that going to be a parallel for Rudy? Like, he at the risk of his life and the risk of even his mental health or his family, takes on something for the greater good of this world.
Okay, I had a thought. Okay. So it started with you talked a lot about, like, Ariel's conflict, Rudy helping there. If Rudy was 100% strength before he went to rescue Paul, where is he at now, down an arm? How much of a, hit did his capabilities and skill take from losing an arm? Nothing's changed. That's an option. Or he's a bit weaker. That's an option. If they want him anymore, that's an option. Then I'm like, holy shit. We have a doll with limbs. What if we get a doll arm and are able to attack? Yeah, and it come from that doll, and within magic use, you're able to use that to reattach his arm.
Yeah, with his own magic, he could be using it.
That could be pretty cool.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Someone call up the writer and, like, tell him that, just in case.
No.
Whatever the person that wrote this story does, I will be happy to see whatever it is, because there's been some really great, like, sometimes I get nervous in stories when they pick certain subjects to talk about or to put in the story and have time with. And I'm always a little bit worried, because some subjects are maybe harder than others to address and have the viewers not feel like it was just used for the fact that it was immediately impactful and maybe didn't do service to it or didn't do the most loving job with it. The most like, okay, I'm putting in this certain subject matter and I am going to do my best at, like, taking care of it as it should be taken care of. I feel like this story has done really well with some of those things, and so I have kind of some faith. I have some faith in the future writing.
Time skip or no? And if so, how long? Rudy, full-grown adult? Rudy, how we left him here?
I think I would not be... Sometimes I am against time skips, or at least initially against the idea of time skips. But I think in this story, we've started from birth with this character, and I do like the idea of just seeing him through his life.
We think Rudy's looking like Paul at season 3, episode 1?
Like Soul 0? And Paul put together.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's all I have you.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.